Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. I am your host, Jenn Washington. This is a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. I would like to extend my gratitude in you listening to this podcast. It means everything to me, and I hope it is clear that this subject matter is so important to me. I care about our people, our future, and making a positive change in this nation. Welcome, guys, to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. On this episode, we will talk about Aiden Ellison. He was a 19-year-old black man from Oregon who was killed for playing his music too loud. Very similar to the Jordan Davis case 8 years prior, actually 8 years prior to the day. Can we say deja vu? We will also talk about the More Act, which has passed in Congress and it's on its way to the Senate, which will decriminalize marijuana. We will talk about the latest in the Breona Taylor matter, and we will also talk about Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party, 50-year anniversary of his death. According to the Jackson County District Attorney's Office, 19-year-old Aiden Ellison was fatally shot by an Oregon man on November 23rd, 2020. The Oregon man was accused of killing the black teen at a hotel during a dispute over loud music. He has pleaded not guilty, and this is Robert Paul Keegan, who is 47 years old. He entered a plea Friday to the charges, including second-degree murder. Here is what allegedly took place. Keegan, who was staying at the Stratford Inn Hotel in Ashland with his 3-year-old son, after becoming displaced in their home in September as a result of the wildfires, he became enraged at Ellison playing music loudly in the parking lot after 4 a.m., according to the Ashland police chief. And this from the Washington Post. Robert Paul Keegan allegedly walked up to the teenager's vehicle in the early morning hours of November 23rd and began arguing about the loud volume of music coming from the 19-year-old's car. Then Keegan, who is white, pulled a gun from his coat pocket and shot the teenager once in the chest, fatally wounding him in the parking lot of the Stratford Inn. First responders attempted to revive the victim at 4:20 a.m., but the police stated it was beyond help and pronounced him dead at the scene. A Oregon advocacy group called the Southern Oregon Black Leaders, Activists, and Community Coalition stated that the teen's murder is another example of Oregon's racist history with and current practice of white supremacy. To be clear, Aiden was murdered because he was a young black person who made a white man uncomfortable and refused to submit to that man's personally perceived authority, not because he was listening to music too loudly. In the opening, I mentioned that this case is eerily similar to Jordan Davis. We may recall the 17-year-old high school student, which on November 23rd, 2012, at a Gate Petroleum gas station in Jacksonville, Florida, Michael David Dunn, a 45-year-old software developer, following an argument over loud music played by Davis and his 3 friends, Dunn was convicted on 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder for firing at 3 other teenagers who were with Davis and 1 count of firing into a vehicle. The jury could not reach a verdict about whether to convict Dunn for the murder of Davis at the first trial. At the second trial, Dunn was found guilty of first-degree murder of Davis. And then we may remember that Davis's mother, Lucy McBath, ran for Congress in Georgia's 6th Congressional District in 2018. On her platform, reform of gun laws was heavy, and she is an activist to this day. Rest in power to both those brothers, Jordan Davis, and Aiden Ellison. This past Friday, the MORE Act, which stands for Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement Act, passed in the House. The House voted 228 to 164 on Friday to pass the MORE Act, which would remove cannabis from the federal list of illegal drugs, create a process for expunging nonviolent federal marijuana convictions, and funnel tax revenue from legal cannabis sales to communities that are disproportionately targeted by police in the war on drugs. It's the first time in history that a chamber of Congress has voted to end federal cannabis prohibition. We may recall that this is one of the many factors that Senator Kamala Harris discussed in the debates that her and Biden plan to do. So this is the first leg of it. There was one significant statement on Twitter from Congresswoman Carolyn Mahoney, and I will read what she wrote there. If we are serious about criminal justice reform, we must end the federal prohibition on cannabis and expunge low-level convictions that disproportionately harm communities of color. Thank you, VP-elect Kamala Harris, for your leadership on this issue. As we just mentioned, Kamala Harris has been a proponent on this, so this definitely has an impact on the African American community, and it's huge. Now, the MORE Act is expected to face opposition in the Republican controlled Senate, where it is unlikely to pass before the end of the year. However, Senator Kamala Harris introduced companion legislation in the Senate that is backed by other leading Democrats, including former presidential candidates Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Cory Booker. Harris is now Vice President-elect and could use her powerful position in the upcoming Biden administration to champion the MORE Act in the next Congress and help end federal marijuana prohibition completely. In our next story, Breona Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, did file a motion in October with the Kentucky Prosecutors Advisory Council to request a new prosecutor to investigate her daughter's police killing. However, the council members claimed they did not have the legal authority to grant the request, and the motion was denied. Palmer argued that Attorney General Daniel Cameron mishandled the case by not presenting adequate evidence to the grand jury that proved the LMPD acted negligently in obtaining the warrant to Taylor's home and the events which led to her being shot to death in her apartment. Really sorry to hear about this. You have to commend her mother for making an attempt to try to get justice here, and just to have the door slammed in your face every single time definitely has to be disheartening. Our thoughts are out to the Breonna Taylor Palmer family. It was trending heavy on Twitter this past Friday. Fred Hampton, 50 years ago today, police murdered Fred Hampton. His activism lived. Based on the date and the spirit of activism that goes on today, I thought it would be good for the culture to discuss this. So Fred Hampton, who was the Illinois chairman of the Black Panther Party, was 21 years old when he was assassinated by the police, a heavily armed Chicago police team under the direction of the Cook County State Attorney, with a floor plan previously obtained from the paid FBI informant in hand, stormed Hampton's apartment while he and other Black Panther Party members slept. Hampton's West Side apartment served as a stronghold for the Illinois chapter, and the police obtained a warrant to search for legal weapons, which they used as a pretext for killing Hampton and weakening the Black Panther Party. They fired more than 90 rounds. Hampton, along with fellow member of the Black Panthers, Mark Clark, were killed in the raid, while other members were wounded. His fiancee, Deborah Johnson, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, miraculously survived. In the aftermath of the raid, the police orchestrated a massive cover-up, claiming they were victims of a shootout to justify the murders. This freedom fighter is worth looking up, you guys. Uh, Definitely timely. Can you imagine 21 years old? Not too much younger than Breona Taylor. Police raid. They just come in and shoot you down. When you look Fred Hampton up, you're going to run across all these great quotes and sound bites of him speaking. Here's one that I thought was pretty dope. You can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail the revolution. And you might murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom fighting. Rest in power, Fred Hampton. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and conclude this episode. I would again like to thank you for listening to Woke by Accident, and we would also like to invite you to follow us on our social media. On Instagram, it is Woke by Accident Podcast, and on Twitter, it is Woke by. Again, we are available on all the platforms for podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, share, like, tell a friend. We do appreciate the feedback and the support. And every time you listen, we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again and take care.